All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bob Bijak,
And I'm Duncan Carranza.
and we are here to present a low prep and low stress way to get students talking about content in your class.
So to start, what we're going to ask you to do, and you can just pause the video while you do it, we're going to have you start with an icebreaker. So you can lift up your phone, turn on your phone's camera, and aim it at this QR code on the screen, and that'll take you to a quick poll about how you feel about icebreakers. When you're done with that, unpause the video and come back.
All right. Now that you're back, the first question of the day is, what is academic discourse? In Portland Public Schools, academic discourse is a structured peer-to-peer communication that occurs within a classroom. Effective discourse happens when students articulate their own ideas and seriously consider their peers' perspectives as a way to construct understanding. What is important is that students are able to process and interact with ideas and with one another using academic vocabulary.
Now, why should we focus on academic discourse? Well, because talking is integral to human learning. We know that broadening participation just beyond the kids who raise their hands in classroom discussions is an important equity issue. We know that in order to process, make sense of, and learn from their ideas, observations, and experiences, students have to talk about them. And finally, that talk forces students to think about and articulate their ideas. Talk can also provide an impetus for students to reflect on what they do and do not understand.
Thanks, Duncan. All right. How the three signature practices support academic discourse. Well, we know that we as educators can meaningfully engage in academic discourse when we know our voice matters, when we have a sense of belonging within the learning community, when we have opportunities to build strong, respectful, and lasting relationships with peers and educators, when our individual and diverse identities are affirmed and positioned as assets, when our lived experience and background are centered and validated, and finally, when our unique perspectives and ideas are validated as a learning condition.
Thanks, Bob. Our goal this morning is that at the end of this, that you will be able to distinguish between level 1, level 2, and level 3 types of questions to increase academic discourse in your classroom.
So one strategy that we believe anyone and everyone can benefit from is what we call a think, ink, pair, share, or anachronized as TIPS. So what is TIPS? Well, TIPS requires no unnecessary prep time. TIPS allows kids to write down ideas before sharing. TIPS decreases any type of risk for students if they're shy and don't want to speak. It allows them processing time and some writing time. TIPS also is a great way for students to demonstrate their understanding through visible and audible means, meaning that you can simply walk around, read, and listen to what the students are saying and writing. And then lastly, TIPS allows kids to scaffold their own learning and then to check in with one another for understanding.
Great. Then we're going to use TIPS and thinking pair share, and we're going to add that and level it up with Costa's leveled questions. And these questions are maybe very familiar to you if you're working with Avid, but they're kind of like Bloom's questions. So level 1 questions are text explicit. These are the kinds of questions where the answer is literally right there in the text. A student can put their finger on it. Level 2 questions are text implicit and require students to kind of synthesize different areas of the text in their head to come up with the answer. So more like finding the main idea or the theme of a text. Level 3 questions are experience-based and ask students to kind of move beyond the text into their real lived experience. So these questions already exist and have been written by lots of other people, so they can be pulled from already existing question banks. Both of these links are great places to get them, so I encourage you to click on those links to find great Costas leveled questions.
All right, so now what? Okay, so given what you now know about tips, and given also what you know about Acosta's levels of questioning, here's where you can merge the two. So merge tips and Costa's questions after, then as the teacher and the reading and writing coach in the room, you can begin with level 1 questions to redirect students back to key areas of the text. So for example, you could do a tips activity and then have the students write a summary of what they just read. You could then move to level 2 questioning for general understanding of larger chunks or the main idea or the theme of the entire text, plus a tips activity. You could then, if you want to challenge the students even further, you could move to a level 3 to connect students with the real world, or things that I love like text to world, text to text, or text to self discoveries to make the learning and understanding of what they've read more relevant. And it also adds rigor to it. And then one big suggestion that we have when leveling questions and adding a tips activity, be sure that in your classroom you've built strong communities and maybe established norms about what the expectations are during such an activity.
Great. And now, after that brief intro into thinking pair share plus Costas questions, we just want to model that. So what we're going to do is we're going to read a text out loud that we think you could use with your students this next week. We will then share with you what questions we selected from the Costas leveled questions banks and just kind of briefly explain why we picked the questions that we did. After that, you will then be able to choose your own text and identify and borrow and grab questions that you would ask your students if you were going to have them read that text.
So the first reading that we're going to look at is a nonfiction article entitled Thanksgiving, A Native American View by Jacqueline Keeler. I celebrate the holiday of Thanksgiving. This may surprise those people who wonder what Native Americans think of this official U.S. celebration of the survival of early arrivals in a European invasion that culminated in the death of 10 to 30 million Native people. Thanksgiving to me has never been about pilgrims. When I was 6, my mother, a woman of the Dene Nation, told my sister and me not to sing Land of the Pilgrim's Pride in America the Beautiful. Our people, she said, had been here much longer and taken much better care of the land. We were to sing Land of the Indian's Pride instead. I was proud to sing the new lyrics in school, but I sang softly. It was enough for me to know the difference. At 6, I felt I had learned something very important. As a child of a Native American family, you are part of a very select group of survivors. And I learned that my family possessed some inside knowledge of what really happened when those poor, tired masses came to our homes. When the Pilgrims came to Plymouth Rock, they were poor and hungry. Half of them died within a few months from disease and hunger. When Squanto, a Wampanoag man, found them, they were in a pitiful state. He spoke English, having traveled to Europe, and took pity on them. Their English crops had failed. The native people fed them through the winter and taught them how to grow their food. These were not merely friendly Indians. They had already experienced European slave traders raiding their villages for 100 years or so, and they were wary. But it was their way to give freely to those who had nothing. Among many of our peoples, showing that you can give without holding back is the way to earn respect. Among the Dakota, my father's people, they say, when asked to give, are we not Nakota and alive? It was believed that by giving, there would be enough for all. the exact opposite of the system we live in now, which is based on selling, not giving. To the Pilgrims and most English and European peoples, the Wampanoags were heathens and of the devil. They saw Squanto not as an equal, but as an instrument of their God to help his chosen people, themselves. Since that initial sharing, Native American food has spread around the world. Nearly 70% of all crops grown today were originally cultivated by Native American peoples. I sometimes wonder what they ate in Europe before they met us. Spaghetti without tomatoes, meat and potatoes without potatoes, and at the first Thanksgiving, the Wampanoags provided most of the food and signed a treaty granting Pilgrims the right to the land at Plymouth, the real reason for the first Thanksgiving. What did the Europeans give in return? Within 20 years, European disease and treachery had decimated the Wampanoags. Most diseases then came from animals that Europeans had domesticated. Cowpox from cows led to smallpox, one of the great killers of our people, spread through gifts of blankets used by infected Europeans. Some estimate that diseases accounted for a death toll reaching 90% in some Native American communities. By 1623, Mather the Elder, a Pilgrim leader, was giving thanks to his God for destroying the heathen savages to make way for a better growth, meaning his people. In stories told by the Dakota people, an evil person always keeps his or her heart in a secret place, separate from the body. The hero must find the secret place and destroy the heart in order to stop the evil. I see, in the first Thanksgiving story, a hidden pilgrim heart. The story of that heart is the real tale that needs to be told. What did it hold? Bigotry, hatred, greed, self-righteousness? We have seen the evil that it caused in the 350 years since. Genocide, environmental devastation, poverty, world wars, racism. Where is the hero who will destroy the heart of evil? I believe it must be each of us. Indeed, when I give thanks this Thursday and I cook my native food, I will be thinking of this hidden heart and how my ancestors survived the evil it caused. Because if we can survive with our ability to share and to give intact, then the evil and the good will that met that Thanksgiving Day in the land of the Wampanoag will come full circle, and the healing can begin. So now that we have read the article, and hypothetically you've had the students read the article, what we're going to do now is we're going to take Costa's level of questions and then intermix those with a tips activity. So remembering that with Costa's level of questioning, level 1 are questions that are text explicit. You can go back to the text and you can find the answer in the text. Level 2 questions are text implicit, meaning it takes a little bit of knowledge and context to answer the question. And then level 3, kind of always my goal as a language arts teacher is to always have level 3 questions, which are experienced based. So text to self, text to world, text to text. So you'll see that with these levels of questions that I've written here, these 6, I have written 2 level 1s, 2 level 2s, and 2 level 3 questions. So I'm just going to go ahead and read these questions out loud. What was the state of the Pilgrims when they arrived at Plymouth Rock? And what happened to the Wampanoags after the first Thanksgiving? So these are level 1 questions because they rely on the text to be answered. All right, the next set of questions are level 2, and remember those are implicit. So number 3, choose 3 words from the article that stand out and explain how those words impact the article. And summarize the main idea of the article and use textual evidence in your response. So in order to fully answer these questions, students would need to be familiar with the article and be able to refer back to it to justify their own argument. And then my favorite types of questions, level 3s, are numbers 5 and 6. So, number 5, justify the statement, and the healing can begin, and explain why this is important. And be sure to explain it. And then number 6, question the author's intent behind writing this article. And was this effective? Explain. So as you can see, numbers 5 and 6 are inviting students to revisit the text, maybe look for key elements that they highlighted or thought about, and then actually explain in their own words how this is affecting them. So how would I use this in a tips activity? Well, let's say that we're going to look at number 4. So summarize the main idea of the article and use textual evidence in your response. So what you would do is you would have the students think about it, then write about it, and then pair up with someone to then share and talk about it.
Now that you've heard how we wrote the 6 questions to match the text, it's your turn to try it. So right now, please take some time and identify a text that you would use with your students in the coming weeks. Once you've selected that text, then go back to those question banks that we shared earlier and identify what questions you'd really ask your kids based on the text that you chose.
So why this technique? And perhaps why these articles? Well, we wanted this to be something meaningful for you to use in your classroom. So this product is designed to be implemented in the classroom in the next couple weeks. The product is designed to practice new learning from session 1 and designed to be actionable in the classroom. This type of activity measures student outcome to determine its effectiveness, and the products should be completed by the time they go to their PLC.
Right now, we'd also love for you to take a little bit of time and click the link in the slide to provide feedback about today's work. So again, the overall plan and implementation of this professional learning day, again, the link is there. I'm sure it will also be shared other ways, but please take some time and provide some feedback.
And to kind of close out, if you wouldn't mind pausing the video at this time and taking a picture of the QR code on your screen, just like you did at the very beginning of our presentation, Duncan and I would so appreciate it. Again, my name is Bob Bijak.
And I'm Duncan Carranza.
And we just both want to thank you all for taking the time for stopping by, listening to our professional development, and Thanksgiving, here we go.